you guys like my cup? It says probably definitely has dog hair in this, and it is accurate. I'm like so nervous for this video. I don't know why. Like, it's like I just feel like somehow people are gonna like actually find it and watch it, and then I'm gonna have a bunch of like 15-year-olds bullying me and like calling me a boomer and trying to like destroy my life. And I'm like, one, no one's gonna see it, but two, if that's what actually happens, then you kind of have a point. So I'm going to sound so old making this video. Like, I know I'm gonna sound like a boomer. I know I'm gonna sound like the oldest person in the world. Hi everyone, my name is Sima. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a bit of a different video. I am going to be talking about stan culture, and more specifically why I think stan culture is really harmful and kind of getting to a point where I see a lot of things that concern me. I haven't done videos like this before just because there's something about longer format stuff or stuff that requires a little bit more nuance that kind of freaks me out, just because it's really easy to misspeak and then not be able to take it back. Like, I know I can edit and all that, but there's just something about like the weight to videos like this that is daunting. And I don't know how like commentary and channels and like video essayists and stuff do it every day. I'm sure they have like more nuanced like actual scripts. I just have like a couple notes that I've taken down just so I stay on track, but still I'm kind of nervous about it. So I'm just gonna jump right in. I kind of have like 5 sort of things I'm gonna go through in this video. So I'm just gonna start out with like what stan culture is, especially like stan Twitter and how that all came to be. I'm gonna talk about the history and sort of where it originated from, what I think a lot of the problems are and where those problems come from. And I do wanna like leave space to acknowledge a lot of the good stuff that comes out of like stan culture and fandom culture and stan Twitter even. And to wrap up, I just really wanna make sure that I address where I think, like, I have no authority or power to change any of this, but I do want to try to like address like what ability we have as people that participate in entertainment and fan culture to change the direction and sort of move things in a better direction. I did do some research for this video. A lot of it is my own opinion, but I'm going to try to be clear on where I'm drawing from my own like experience and opinions and what I'm getting from another source by either putting the source like on screen and I will be linking everything down below. I will say a lot of this is a mix of my own opinion and personal experience and anecdotal experience and stuff that I've researched. Usually like in journalism, you won't really, like a lot of the time that stuff won't intersect. To be very clear, like this is not a journalistic video. This is not a video that I'm pretending to be some sort of like expert on or pretending it's coming from like an unbiased source. This is going to be a lot of my personal experience and a lot of opinion. So with all those disclaimers out of the way, let's just jump right in. Actually, I have one more disclaimer. I also want to say I'm coming at this very specifically from the perspective of someone who is a fan, someone who in my day-to-day life, I participate in fandoms. I don't do it on Twitter, but I'm 25 years old and I have been like an active participant in many fan communities since I was probably like 12 years old. So I've like been through the ringer. I think I have like enough experience to be able to give my opinion about this from a place of someone who understands. Like I get being really invested in things. I get like the borderline obsession, all consuming thought process. Like that's how I feel about things currently, like as a 25-year-old. Like there are things that I go absolute like mentally apeshit for. Like this is not from a place of like disparaging people that are heavily involved in fan culture. It's not from a place of shaming them. It's just there are things that I see that are just like not healthy, and I think the best way to make those things better and make fandom a safer space for everyone is to address them like head on. Okay, so what is stan culture and where did the term stan originate from? So there's kind of like a debate on where the origin of the term stan is. Some people say it's like a combination of the words stalker and fan, so kind of already like shitty connotation there. So a lot of other people attribute it earlier to the song Stan by Eminem, which came out in the year 2000 when I was 5 years old. So the subject of the song Stan is a guy named Stan. He is a big fan of Eminem / Slim Shady, whatever. I'm not like really into the Eminem lore, but he's a big fan. The song is kind of going back and forth. It starts with Stan writing a letter to Eminem, and he writes more and more letters talking about how much he loves him, how much he's impacted his life, and he slowly gets more and more aggravated that he's not really getting answers, and he feels like Eminem is ignoring him, and it kind of escalates to the point where he locks his pregnant girlfriend in the trunk of his car and then I believe drives off a bridge, killing everyone inside obviously, and then the song ends with Eminem like responding to the letter and like, you know, like being like, sorry, I've been busy, you need to calm down, and kind of talking about how he just read in the newspaper about this crazy fan who like killed his girlfriend and himself and the baby, and like by the end of the letter he realizes that he's been reading about Stan and he like connects the dots, and that's the song. It's a good song. Again, not a great connection, you know? Like, the song, not great. Like, I mean, the song is great, but the connotations, the subject matter, not something you want to emulate. Stalker fan, not something you want to emulate. Like, I think something in old, and I don't think it doesn't exist anymore, but I think the concept of being a stalker and the concept of being like a crazy fan has always been something that like when you were part of a fan culture, you didn't want to be associated with like people that cross boundaries. Like, you very much didn't want to be a stalker fan. You didn't want to be someone who crossed boundaries. You wanted to be seen as someone who respected the people that meant so much to you. And I feel like now stan has become this term of like pride, which I think is problematic because, like, again, it's glorifying these behaviors that are really intense and to a point where it's no longer healthy, you know what I mean? And kind of going back to that, like, I remember when stan was starting to become a term, but it wasn't like popularized yet. Like, it was kind of starting to become a thing, but it wasn't like entrenched. Like, it wasn't like stan culture was not a thing. It was still like, it still had an element of very extremeness to it. Like, it wasn't just like if you like liked Lady Gaga, you were immediately like a little like you were a little monster, but you weren't like immediately like a stan of Lady Gaga. Like, that was still like, it was still new enough that people were having discussions about the term, and that was what a lot of people brought up that had such a negative history. The counterpoint to that was stan is gender neutral, which I know a lot of people liked because, like, at the time it was like if you were like not just a regular fan, like you were like next level dedicated, you were a fangirl, which obviously is has a lot of negative connotations to it. Like, it's very sexist. Like, fangirls are kind of depicted as being shallow and really only caring about appearances and being loud and screamy, and like, and again, it was a very gendered term. Like, fangirls are all girls, and so a lot of like non-binary people or like gender fluid people or just like boys, men in fandom wanted to have like a term that represented them as well. And so I could see the need for that. But I just, like, the pivot to fan was something that I feel like a lot of people at that time were not comfortable with. Because again, the concept of standing something or being a stalker fan was like built off such a place of like, the origin itself was so problematic and unhealthy and invasive. And so, like, I get wanting a gender neutral term. I don't understand why we can't just call, like, why can't we just use fan? Like fan is inherently a gender neutral word. It does not have those the insane connotations in history that stan does. So nowadays, like 2020, stan culture, stan Twitter, that all just represents, it's a label for really dedicated fans and a verb that's used for like the act of like obsessively following something and like the collective culture around like a particular celebrity or show. And it's very much like a community aspect, like a group of people that are bonded over their love for X, Y, and Z. And there's definitely like an element of like idolization that comes with, like, if you stan someone, it's not like, you're not just like, I'm a fan of their work. Like, you idolize everything they do. There's very much like a sort of like, there's no nuance to it. Like, it's very much like you are all in. You would like die for them. You would take bullets for them. They are yours to protect. They are yours to like go above and beyond for. And like, again, as someone who's grown up, like, and spent formative years in these communities, like, I get it. Like, there are bands, like, like, I fully would probably donate organs for like any member of the band Fall Out Boy. Like, no questions asked. If I was compatible, I would give every single member of Fall Out Boy like a kidney. I don't have enough kidneys to give them all one, but if one of them needed one and my kidney was available and useful to them, I would give it to them. Like, so like, I understand. I really want to make it clear that like, this is not, I'm not trying to shame people, but I am trying to shame behaviors that I think are not healthy. And so stan behavior has really like, I think, coalesced particularly on Twitter, where people have like their little like niches where they're very enthusiastic about their interests. They're very dedicated to promoting the people they love and making sure like their careers reach the next level through like the sheer dedication of like collective organizing through a fan base. And like, kind of the success of the artist and the success of, I'm gonna say artist or creator, but like, this is referring to stans of anything, you know, like TV shows, movies, actors, singers, YouTubers, bands, whatever, like cartoons. But the success of the thing you're standing is kind of, it becomes the success of the fandom. And so so much of it has like fans have taken so much of that promotion upon themselves through things like hashtags and promo and getting things to #1 and like streaming parties and memes, and it's like a lot of it's very harmless. Like, memes are harmless. Like, streaming parties are like fun. Like, they don't harm anyone. I know a lot of people think like, oh well, a #1 from a streaming party is like illegitimate, but like, I don't, like, in 2020 that's just good marketing. Like, frankly, like, that I have no issues with. If you want to like stream a band's single for like 12 days straight, like, power to you. I don't, like, that's just the game now, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like one group has more of an ability to do it than another group. Like, that doesn't make it any more or less legitimate, I don't think. So like, that is not an issue. That's like the structure of this makes sense. I'm trying to go in a sort of like a clear order, but I haven't had to organize thoughts since university, and that was 3 years ago. So I apologize if this is all over the place. I'm trying to keep it coherent. So next thing I want to talk about is like the origins of like how I think we got from like what stan culture and stan Twitter is to like now. So I think one big thing was Twitter. I think the creation of Twitter, I think Twitter was so I joined Twitter in December 2008 for a very specific reason. William Beckett, then of the band The Academy Is, joined Twitter and he posted about it, obviously. And as someone who was a big fan of The Academy Is, and still is, honestly, I followed him to I followed him to Twitter. I also followed him to Tumblr. Like, for some reason, he was very quick to adopt these new social medias. Like, he was the first of all the band people that I loved that joined them both. And so my first follows, I think, on both of those websites are William Beckett. Funny side tangent. So I have been on Twitter for a very long time. I've been on Twitter for 12 years? 12 years. I've been on Twitter for almost 12 years. And so when Twitter first like was created, it was like, very revolutionary. You know what I mean? Like, one, I don't think anyone really knew what Twitter was for. Like, that's where all the memes come from about how like no one cares about what you're eating for breakfast, because that's like literally what Twitter was. Like, it would be a lot of like, I'm eating a sandwich. Like, it was dumb stuff like that. And like, so everybody on it was doing that though. So like celebrities were doing that. Regular people were doing that. Twitter hadn't really become like the juggernaut for like politics and news yet that it is now. So like there wasn't really much of that. I feel like 2009, 2010 is really when I think like I saw Twitter really, and then like a couple years later, like during the Arab Spring and stuff, like you really got to see the impact of Twitter on the ground in places where journalists couldn't get access to. And that's when Twitter kind of shifted to having like that kind of presence. But for the first couple years of Twitter, like no one really knew what it was for. Like it was kind of just finding its footing. And so so all these celebrities were on Twitter, and it was like this crazy thing where you could just like respond to them. Like they would post something and you could reply, and sometimes they would answer you, sometimes they wouldn't, sometimes they would see it, sometimes they wouldn't, but it was like very novel, you know what I mean? Like open like Instagram DMs weren't a thing. And really before that, you would only really have access to celebrities in very specific contained spaces, like meet and greets, or if they like set a date to come hang out on a message board and like answer a few questions, like do a formal like Q&A, like that was how you interacted with celebrities. And so with Twitter, it's kind of like, and at first I think when people were approaching celebrities, they were still approaching them on Twitter through that same lens of like very respectful, very much like how you would approach a celebrity if you ran into them at like a restaurant. Like you'd be like, I get that this isn't a typical fan to creator space, but I'm still approaching you as a fan, and I'm trying to be respectful, and I'm trying to like show my admiration without bothering you. So you would like, when I would respond to like Andy Hurley of Fall Out Boy in 2009, 2010, it was very much like, hi, oh my god, I'm a big fan of your work. Or like you would respond to what they were saying. So they would post like, just had like this amazing like lunch or whatever, and you'd be like, oh, like that's so cool, like what did you eat? Like, I'm sorry if you guys can see dog hair, there's dog hair flying everywhere. But it was very much like, it was very new to everybody. Nobody knew what they were doing on Twitter. Twitter hadn't formed its own unique culture yet, but it was very new. The access that it gave people to their favorite creators was very new. Like, I think that's why I joined Twitter. I was like, this is crazy. Like I can just like respond to anything Gabe Saporta or Pete Wentz or Brendan Urie posts. Like I can respond to all of those things. And that was the incentive for me to join Twitter, was literally like, I was like, this is insane. And I think I wiped every tweet from before 2012 or 2013, like off my Twitter account. But if I hadn't, there would definitely be me trying to get the attention of celebrities, like of like band people at like 13, 14 years old. So like, again, been there, done that, I get it. But I think like the counterpoint of that is like, because it's so much easier to get that attention, Twitter culture has evolved in a way where like, if you are part of like fan Twitter, you are very hyper focused on getting those notices, because now it's kind of like impossible. Like you have to be so, especially with really, really huge like juggernaut celebrities who have like millions of followers, like it's impossible to get up a notice. Like if I look at the Twitter accounts that I first followed, and I look at them now, they still like, a lot of them don't post anymore on Twitter and like don't have like active bands anymore. So like they just don't, like a lot of them have retreated from like celebrity-ness. So look, they have like 18, 20, 30,000 followers maybe. And some of them even less, like some of them have like, who are like not the frontmen of the bands they were in, for example, have like 10,000. So like, and even then it was hard to get notices when they were like active, you know what I mean? And now it's like there's millions of people trying to get the attention of like one person. And so it's, that access has made people, I think, a little bit unhinged, because you have to be so dedicated usually to get any speck of attention, because you have to stand out when millions of people are trying to get the same notices as you do. So notices are like both way more accessible, but also like it's such a battle to get them, which I think is part of the problem. So again, going back to the origins of Twitter, I think fan culture really started to take shape with One Direction. I think One Direction fans, Directioners, were some of the first fans to sort of, and I could be wrong, like again, like this is all based on my own memories, which are shoddy at best, but is like One Direction Twitter was really when I started personally noticing a community forming on Twitter, and that community like banding together for an objective. So the way Twitter used to work, trending hashtags were a thing. Usually it was like, I don't even know if we used to have country specific ones. We could have, but maybe not, I don't remember. But it was very basic. It was like, just like, if you had a hashtag, it would trend. And so people would try to get so One Direction fans would try to get different things trending on the global top 10 to show their support. And so really the two big fan bases at the time were like One Direction and Justin Bieber. It was like Directioners versus Beliebers, and they would kind of harness their fan power and kind of come together to do like these hashtags, and oftentimes the hashtags would compete against each other. Like there would be like, let's try to trend higher than the Beliebers. Like, and that was, I think, the beginning of fans realizing the power that they held and the fact that they could do stuff with it. And back in the day, like in 2011, 2012, 2013, it was like relatively benign, especially at first. It was very much like you would trend stuff, but it was all like fun. Sometimes when mean things happened, there would be like apology trends. It was kind of like wholesome, and also very much like the celebrities were not super involved in it yet. And like, again, I think fans communities being a thing has always been a thing, like Beatlemania in the 60s, or like Listomania in like the 1800s, like, and even in ancient Rome, like they would sell gladiator sweat and people could buy it and like put it on their bodies. Intense celebrity obsession is not new, it's not unique, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. Like I think like it's all been normal. I think the addition of like this specific form of access through technology is what is the problem. I think there's always like an element of like being private, you know what I mean? Like Beatlemania, like you would only be around other Beatles fans like when you were at a Beatles show, and you would all go nuts together and then you would all go home. Even when I was growing up, like before I joined Twitter in like 2008, but like my first few years of like really strong fan culture, and even now, like the way I still interact, because I guess I'm like a fandom grandma now, which is crazy to think about, but like for some reason being like over 20 in like fan spaces is like strange. People find that weird, which is like kind of odd to me, because like I don't know if your fan interests are supposed to die when you like age out of being a teenager. Like am I supposed to just like kneel over and like stop having interests? I don't know, that's a whole other discussion. But like when I was a tween or whatever as the kids say, and even now, like the way I interact with fan spaces is it's very private. So my introduction to like I had fandom interests before 2008, but my first time joining like a fan community was in 2008. I joined the Panic at the Disco message boards on the Fueled by Ramen websites. Yes, that sounds ancient, message boards, I know. The fact that Fueled by Ramen even had message boards, crazy, right? But it was very much like the band, we were like fully like unhinged on there. Like there was fan fiction on there. We were writing fan fiction, like collaborative fan fiction on public message boards that were for the record label. Like, but the thing was, even though that was all hosted by the record label, nobody was visiting. Like nobody was paying attention. Like there was no supervision. There was like one guy who was like the moderator, and first of all, we like beefed with him all the time. I don't think he got paid. He definitely was not affiliated with the record label. I think he just really liked Panic at the Disco. I think his name was Dan, but we found his name. I think it was a big deal when we realized his name, because his username was Zenoby, like Znoby. And we all found out his name was Dan, and we like flipped shit. And this was before the message board shut down. But so we had our own little fan community on there, but it was very much like the band doesn't see anything we do here. And we were all very like, no one expected the band to see anything we did there. And then we kind of like transitioned to Tumblr, which again still has this very much culture of like celebrities don't hang out on Tumblr. Like a couple band people had Tumblr at the time, like William Beckett had one, Pete Wentz had one, Alex from All Time Low had one, Patrick Stump had one. Taylor Swift I know still hangs out on Tumblr, but she's like the exception. Like no celebrities that ever got Tumblr like stayed on Tumblr. Like Tumblr was and still is considered like, it's private. Your fan shit on Tumblr stays on Tumblr, and I like strongly believe in that, like maintaining that separation. Like if I knew a celebrity I admired had even heard like a whiff of my Tumblr, I would delete it like so fast. I do not want my fan shit to be perceived at all whatsoever. And that's like a very different mindset, whereas I feel like on Twitter, like your whole goal is to be perceived. Like I know people have like private accounts or rant accounts or whatever, but those are like exactly what they sound like. They're meant to be private and ranty, and those are not there for the attention of the people. But like the main stan accounts, they exist to be perceived. And I think like that constant grind to be noticed and to be perceived has really warped the culture in a strange way, because so much of what happens now is about like people one-upping each other and performance. And so I feel like Twitter really like eradicated that gate, that separation of like the fan and the creator. And I really truly believe like there needs to be some degree of separation for a fan base to be like a healthy space. And I feel like the way that has sort of like dissolved has really like, I think it's made things worse for like other fans, but it's also I think made things worse for creators, you know what I mean? Like because that separation is completely gone, people don't interact with the people they idolize in like an appropriate manner anymore because there's no separation. Like when I would interact with like a member of Fall Out Boy on Twitter, I was still like very much like, you are a famous person that I don't know and I'm a fan. And so I would speak to them in a manner that I would speak to them at like a meet and greet. As time has gone on and as that whole gate has like completely collapsed, people speak to each other in a way that they speak to their friends, but they also speak to celebrities the way they would talk to their friends. And that's not healthy or normal or good. And it's almost like because this extreme behavior is rewarded, like if you are like that dedicated, you'll eventually get a notice. It's like this feedback loop of like bad behavior getting rewarded, which makes people have to one-up themselves and being really intense. And so like the fan, like even like the fan on fan like interactions, like it's become very toxic. Like when Beliebers and Directioners would beef, it was like the bands, like I'm sure like they would joke about it in interviews and like kind of like haha, like fire shots, but they very much like stayed out of it, and it was very much like a fan base versus a fan base. And even taking it back to like I don't know, when I was a kid, like I don't recall any of this, but when Backstreet Boys and NSYNC fans were like a thing, like you can like call up your local like NSYNC fan chapter and like start bullying people if you were like a Backstreet Boys fan. Like you guys really wouldn't cross paths all that much. So like the extent of that debate or like fight or like stan war would be like you have a friend who likes a different boy band than you, and you guys would like playfully like jab at each other over lunch at school, and that would be the end of it, you know what I mean? Like I don't think you could maybe I'm wrong, maybe I need to do more research, but like fan bases now are all about not just elevating the people they love, but tearing down not only the artists they don't like or the artists that rival theirs, but tearing down fans too. So like the fan wars are so intense and so like insane, and so like it becomes like this weird like if you like something that I don't like, you are my enemy, and therefore I can like be absolutely awful to you for like no reason. It's crazy. It's like insane. It's insane behavior. I've kind of already touched on some of the issues, but I'm really gonna dive deep into some of the really insanely problematic behaviors I've seen on Stan Twitter. And there's a lot. Like I know a lot of people bring up the fan cam thing. I'm gonna be really honest. Like I don't understand fan cam culture, but I don't think it's an issue. Is it annoying to me? Sure. I found myself getting less annoyed with it when I kind of like, again, flipped it into like old lady terms that I understand. And like when I was on message boards, like sometimes people would have signatures on their message boards, which were just like little like phrases. Sometimes they were lyrics, sometimes they were like a little banner photo, but it was kind of like it was your signature. Like you would sign off all your posts with it. Like I still have one on the Neopets forums, which I still access because I still use Neopets sometimes. But I had them on the Panic at the Disco message boards, and like really like they were kind of an integral part of like your identity on message boards. When I think of fan cams as kind of like the Twitter variant of that, of like a sign off, it kind of makes them more palatable to me, because I get it. I get that it's annoying when they're spammed on posts. Like I'm okay with them if people write something that's relevant to the conversation and then just like also add their fan cam. Like yeah, it's kind of annoying, but like it's ultimately kind of harmless. I don't like it when there's not even a conversation going on and they're just being spammed. I kind of find that kind of irritating. But like I feel like the main like fan bases are so annoying part of Twitter really comes down on fan cams. I really don't think that's like the issue. They're just like an evolved version of like AMVs and yeah, like signatures like that, whatever, put that aside. The real issue I think is the element of like cancel culture, which again, I don't actually think cancel culture in the context of canceling celebrities is a real thing, but the hashtag over parties and trying to like destroy people's careers, that we're gonna get into. And there's a lot of racism and like appropriation that goes on that's really toxic. So like again, going back to like the fact that like bad behavior is validated, people have accounts dedicated to stalking celebrities and giving tips on how to meet them, and like, which again, trying to stalk a celebrity is not new. People going to like airports to meet the Beatles or like hotels to find the Beatles, like that's not new behavior. Like that has always been, unfortunately, like a part of celebrity culture. But I think the ease of access on the internet and the way that you can hide behind like an anonymous like username and like image makes it very easy for people to share that information and not be held accountable for it. People will share like very private information for like the clout that it'll get them. They'll leak things for clout. And sorry if you can hear that, it's my dog. She's chewing on an antler. But I don't come down on people that enjoy leaks. I think unfortunately leaks are kind of inevitable in a digital age. The people that do the leaking, I think, are the people that need to unfortunately like be held responsible, and it's very hard to do that with anonymous people. Being anonymous makes people feel very bold. Like people say shit on Twitter that they would never dare to say to someone in real life. Like them or not, Like the weird, petty, like outright bullying that happens on Twitter because people are hiding behind screen names and like celebrity images is insane to me. Like people get downright rude, mean, like invasive as hell. The way they talk to people they are supposedly idolizing and they supposedly respect is like awful. Like truly disgusts me to my core sometimes. So it's over parties. Like so cancel culture. Okay, I'm gonna just like I don't think cancel culture is real when it comes to celebrities. In that like no celebrity that has ever been canceled except for like I don't know Kevin Spacey maybe or like Harvey Weinstein, but the vast majority of people that are like decried as like victims of cancel culture who like got unfairly like dragged on social media. What does it do to their careers? Like absolutely nothing. They're still out there like making movies. Like they're still out there like with like thousands and thousands of fans. Like it does not affect them in a material way whatsoever. Like having a couple like mean tweets does not hurt, like affect them. So I don't think like no one is actually ever canceled. But I do think these cancel parties that people have on social media are like inherently like an issue. First of all, I don't think you should be like having a party. Like it's not a celebration. Like someone pulling like awful shit worthy of canceling is not like a celebration. Like you shouldn't be happy that someone has done something hurtful to the point where like they've earned it. And if it's not something hurtful, then it's something petty that you are again like leveraging to elevate the person you stan. And that's my biggest issue is a lot of the times these cancel parties, like I will go into like the hashtags to see, oh, like why is this person done a bad thing? And sometimes it's like very benign. Not benign, but sometimes it's like very harmless and that it's like, oh, said person made a shitty joke when they were 16 like 10 years ago. And sometimes it's like said person is a predator who is like preying on young fans. Like, and those are two very different scenarios. Like, get treated exactly the same on Twitter. Like, the playbook is exactly the same. There's a cancellation tag. You go into the tag to figure out what's going on. You'll almost never actually see anything about the actual issue. Like, no one's actually talking about like how like awful or like whatever the person is in trouble for. It's always people being like, instead of standing X, stand Y, and it's like a fan cam, and then people being like, you know, you deserved to feel awful about like said public figure betraying the trust of their fans and being horrible because you stand them instead of standing like Luna or standing Taylor Swift or like whatever you want to call it, you know what I mean? And that's like, if you are using social justice issues to promote an artist, like just like stop. Like you are already like, you've lost it. Like you've lost the plot. Reevaluate your life, reevaluate your choices. Like someone being a predator is not the opportunity for you to start promoting your fave. Like that's like the fact that even needs to be said. I'm sorry, I cannot speak in this video because I think about stuff like this and it makes me so angry that it even needs to be said. Like it's so inappropriate. It's so like, if allegations like that are true, how do you think it makes the actual victims feel to see their trauma being used as like leverage to make another celebrity look better? Like, that's not even what anything of this should be about. Like, so you should care about someone being a predator because it's horrible and that they should be condemned for it and they should be, you know, held accountable for their actions, not because it's an excuse for you to be like, your fave is problematic and mine isn't. Because first of all, no one is not problematic, and there's a difference between problematic and being like bad, like being a bad person. Twitter has completely eradicated the difference because they treat every situation the same. Like it's a joke. Like it's a joke. If you make a cancellation tag celebrating someone being horrible, you are making a joke of the really sometimes awful things they've done. If it's something that's benign or not that serious or like really old stuff that like really they've clearly grown past, then you're just like, again, you are trying to tear someone down, not because you care that they were racist as a 16-year-old, not that you care that they were problematic, but because you think this is a great chance to convert people into standing your fave. Which has that ever worked? Has being like, haha, I don't know, Ansel Elgort got accused of X, Y, and Z, come stan Timothy Chalamet. Has that ever worked for anyone? Like have fans been like, you know what, you're right. I'm gonna immediately like cast off my like admiration of this person and move on to standing this other person. Like, does that work? It's crazy, it doesn't make any sense to me. And it's just like, it becomes this weird like bandwagon cult mentality too, where like everybody piles on. There's no room, first of all, for like any sort of nuanced discussion. Like a lot of like people have learned that this is a great way to get eyes on their fan cams or to like make celebrities feel bad. Like to like people have like fan bases have learned that they have this power as a group, as a collective, and they leverage it in really harmful ways. Like there's no nuance, there's no discussion. No one, like a lot of the times it's stuff that's like photoshopped or like stories that have been made up. And I'm not trying to say this to discredit situations, but like, because there's no room to have those discussions because it just inevitably descends into like fan cam chaos and like, I don't know, like people tearing each other up and down, and it's like there's no nuance to it. There's no nuance. That is my biggest issue. It's just bandwagoning hate, and then it's like people have these insane expectations too. Like someone will get called out, and like let's say there's even like the evidence is like there. Like the evidence is there. It's like pretty clear that X, Y, and Z is a bad person. people will start like tagging, like stan accounts will start tagging their mutuals and being like, you have 24 hours to unfollow this person or I will like block you. And it's like, first of all, the expectation that you're on all the time and you're following all of this like discourse at all times is like insane. It's so unhealthy. But two, it's like, is that what we're doing now? We're like sitting around like policing people's behavior in that way? Like, like what in the fuck? Like, no. Like, what do you mean you have 24 hours to unfollow? Like, either you trust your friends to be good people, and in that scenario, they are going to unfollow, or you don't. Like, if you don't trust your friends enough to make those calls themselves, why are you friends with them? Like, what? It's so crazy to me. People like, well, and people do it for anything. They'll be like, people will be like, stan account A got a fight with stan account B, and like fans of stan account B will be like, I see you're following stan account A. If you don't follow them in Twitter, like, what? How is that not bullying? How is that not like literally like high school clickiness taken next level over the internet? Because it's like, it's not like 10, 15 people, it's like thousands of people being like piling onto each other. It's like the bandwagoning is insane. It doesn't make any sense. I feel like I'm just ranting. I was hoping so badly that this was gonna be like an organized video and it just turned into me like yelling. There's no genuine desire to advocate when cancellation stuff happens. There's no advocating for victims, there's no advocating resources, there's no uplifting of people that are affected. It's very much just like, it's gleeful almost. I think that's the word. Like, it's this gleeful joy. There's this gleeful joy that you're knocking one more peg out of the way to like get your fave to where you want them to be, which is scary. Kind of going back to the fact that there's no nuance whatsoever. When like artists are pitted against each other too, like when artists are beefing, there's no room for, hey, maybe both of the people involved made some mistakes. You know what I mean? Because there's such a cult, like, I hate to throw this word around lightly, but there's such a cult mentality in Twitter stan culture specifically, where it's like, if you're not defending your fave at all costs, you're like, you will get cast out of the stand-up. Like, it's like insane to me. Like, there's no nuance, there's no like, well, maybe they both made mistakes, or like maybe we just don't know the full situation, and like we should not be out here like beefing over like what grown people are doing. Like, so for example, like I think a really good situation, like a really like the perfect example is obviously like the Kanye West, Kim Kardashian versus Taylor Swift situation, where people really ping-ponged back and forth. People who are like middle ground on that, like who like are not fans of either of those entities, really like flipped back and forth with whose side they were on. You know what I mean? Like based on like the media narrative and like what information we had at the time. People that were like stans of either of those entities, insane. No nuance whatsoever. Like, I feel like me as a person who has like seen both sides, I can be like, I think both parties used that situation when they could to their benefit. You know what I mean? Taylor Swift held back a lot of the truth that could have probably saved her in a lot of ways. Manipulated the situation, like really had used a lot. I feel like Swifties are gonna kill me. Taylor was not like, I don't think there was not a good guy in the situation and there was not a bad guy. Like, I think like Taylor's reasoning to be upset with Kanye, very legitimate. Having her like a depiction of her naked body in a video, terrible, awful. Calling her a bitch, terrible, awful. Like, should not have happened. She was valid to be upset about that. She was not valid, like I don't know why she didn't just like say there was a phone call in the first place and be like, I agree to some parts of this but not the whole thing. Like the whole way her and her team handled that situation, like yeah, it made her look like a liar. A lot of people who have no stakes in either of these entities like, turned on her, and then once the truth came out, like turned on Kanye, and then we all moved on. The two stan bases involved are still beefing about this. If you go on anything Kanye West posts, there's still Taylor Swift stans like posting snake emojis and yelling at him and calling him like a flop. If you go on her page, like it's like nuts. Like there's no need to do that. Like, are these people paying your bills? There's no nuance. There's no room for Taylor manipulated the situation for her own benefit. Kim and Kanye were like wrong for calling her that and again, manipulating the situation to their own benefit. Like inherently every celebrity, what they are doing at all times is shaping a narrative. And when you shape a narrative, you try to cut out the parts that don't make you look good. And so like when stan culture like refuses to accept the nuance and refuses to accept that like none of these people are perfect and they are all clearly shaping a narrative, and that what you see is not even a fraction of what these people are like in real life, it's really unhealthy. Like it's so unhealthy. Like I cannot believe I still see tweets of people like people beefing about this. Or like this happens less now because like Katie and Taylor like put their beef aside or like made up or whatever. But like for years, Taylor Swift fans and Katy Perry fans were like yelling at each other on Twitter, like for nothing. Like it would be completely irrelevant, like not related to anything post that Katy Perry would make, and Swifties would come yell at her about it. Or like Taylor Swift would make a post and like Katy Cats would come like yell at her, like yell about it and like fight stands in the comments, and it was so unnecessary. Like it was like not relevant to like the beef or the feud or anything. Is it healthy to be super fixated on these like insane like made up beefs at all times? I'm sorry, I'm like, is this making any sense? It's just like the bandwagoning can get so mean so fast, and it's so unhealthy. Like, and like, yeah, like going back to the whole like NSYNC versus Backstreet Boys things, like those fans could not really like be at each other's throats 24/7 just because the internet like was not a thing back then the way it is now. Like, so the extent of like you beefing would be like you ran into someone and you started talking about music, and then you kind of had disagreements about like who was better. But again, you would never like to the face of someone who's a fan of something that you didn't like be like, you're such a like you wouldn't be like, go like kill yourself, dumb bitch. Like you would never say that to someone's face, or you'd never be like, your fave is a flop, like they only sold X amount of like albums. You would be so much more respectful in real life. Like you would maybe like if they're a friend, you would make jokes about it, but you would never say the things people do on social media. And this is not new. Like I'm not saying anything new. I'm not being like social media is so bad. This is like smokes blunt, like this is brand new information. Like we all know social media is bad. We all know it's contributing to harmful behavior. We all know it's like eradicating social norms and boundaries. But it's like I worry so much about these kids that grow up thinking this is normal and thinking that like you can just say stuff like this to people as long as you're like behind a keyboard and your like identity is not attached to it. Like the harm that does, like there's still another person on the other side, and like it doesn't matter if they know who you are or not. Like the impact of those words is still there, and it's almost I think worse when you don't know who it's coming from. And it's like it's not even just like, so there's like the inter-fan, like fan on fan violence, and then there's like stan culture, like is very much like an eat your own kind of thing. Like you will turn on your fellow fan like in an instant. Like if they are not as supportive as you'd like, you turn on them so quickly. But it also like people turn on celebrities so like so many celebrities have taken like huge social media breaks because stan culture is so unhealthy. And like yeah, sometimes it's like a rival fan base coming after them and it's really toxic, but sometimes it's their own fans. Like their own fans will come after them in a way that's like insane to me. Like again, holding people to like really unreasonable standards. Like I remember like earlier this year, Aiden Gallagher from the Umbrella Academy was getting a lot of shit on Twitter. I can't even remember why, man. It was like he just like I think is like the target of a lot of memeing, and like people have like legitimate criticisms of him, and I think they have a lot of illegitimate criticisms of him. And I think my tweet was something along the lines of like Aiden Gallagher is 15-16 years old. People say and do a lot of dumb shit when they're 15-16 years old, and just because a teenager is in the public eye does not mean that like you need to hold them to an adult standard. Like people are gonna make mistakes at that age, and like there's like you can make polite criticisms, you can be like try to educate them, but there's like a level of like, you know, like let teenagers be teenagers, let them grow out of their own like cringe shit. Like because a lot of the criticism that Aiden Gallagher gets is like he's cringy. That's like the main thing. People are mad at him because he's like aggressively vegan and kind of cringy. And there's other stuff too. Like there's more serious stuff, but again, it's nothing that I think is unforgivable and nothing that he's not going to grow out of. So that was the extent of my tweet, was literally just like, let teenagers be teenagers, let them grow out of their own shit. Everyone's cringy as a teenager. So many people came after me and called me a transphobe because like I think, and again, I don't know the nuances of the situation because I'm not involved in that stand-up at all, but I think he'd misgendered like a moderator in his chat or something. But so because I said let teenagers be teenagers, I somehow was endorsing him misgendering this person. Nowhere in that tweet was I like saying don't hold him accountable, or you know, he's not responsible for his actions. It was very much like just like he is a teenager. Teenagers are bound to make mistakes. Let him grow out of being a teenager. Don't hold the stuff he does now against him forever, and don't hold him to an unfair standard just because he's in the public eye. That was the extent of the tweet. There was no endorsement of anything he had done. There was no what he did was okay. None of that. But it was somehow like because I wasn't like, let's banish him from the internet immediately, I was apparently like endorsing transphobia. But yeah, like I remember in 2016, Normani from Fifth Harmony like took a social media break because Camila Cabello stans were coming after her for like allegedly, I don't know, like snubbing her or being rude or like struggling to say something nice about her, which like I know Alessia Cara has said that stan culture has really like had an impact on her mental health. If I can find the screenshot of what she said, I'll like put it up here. But Alessia Cara has taken breaks. I know Kelly Marie Tran from like the Star Wars franchise got so much like racist vitriol that she took a social media break. Austin from Water Parks like was just not on Twitter for like 5 or 6 months. Like when I got into the band this year, he was not on Twitter, and he like continued to not be on Twitter until like very recently, to my understanding, because people are so toxic. And like I don't envy them like at all. Like I don't know what I would do if I had like thousands, if not millions of people speaking to me familiarly. Like they know me when they know nothing about me at all, except for like the tiniest fraction that they see on the internet. And half the time they're speaking to me in a very rude, familiar manner. Like the way like I wouldn't even talk to my friends sometimes. Like cause not all friendships are like that. Like not all friendships are friendships where you can be like playfully mean to each other, first of all. But second of all, you're not friends with these people. Like, as much as like people think they know these people, you're not their friend. You can't talk to them like your friends, especially like that kind of friendship. Like, if that was what I saw when I opened my social media apps every day, I would go off the wall. Like, I would delete everything, move into like a forest, and like never be seen again. But yeah, it's like you think because you're friends, you guys can get mean, and it's like witty meanness. It's like funny to be like, you know, like haha, like there's like this element of like, if you're witty but if you're mean, but as long as you're witty, or like you keep it like friendly mean, it's like okay. And there's such like a mob mentality. Like it's like a pylon. Like it becomes funny. Like once someone becomes like a victim or like a target of like stands, everyone goes after them. And then if you're like any sort of like, hey, please don't do this, becomes, well, they're famous, they can like take care of themselves, like why are you defending this famous person? When it's like, they're still people, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter how famous you are, if like thousands of people are telling you that you're awful or you're ugly or you're cringy or like, and that's the thing, it's like, it's never like thousands of people being like, hey, you fucked up, you were racist, like address your actions. It's always, even if like the thing that sparks it is like racism, it's literally always becomes like, you're ugly, untalented, don't deserve a platform, go die. Like it never focuses on the actual like what the perceived or actual like trigger of the whole mob mentality attack is. And there's no room for growth. Like that's what I said, like when people bring up a celebrity's actions from like 10 years ago and then like expect them to be that same person now and be like held accountable like for those actions, it's like there's no room for growth. And I do think like just because something happened a while ago doesn't mean you shouldn't take accountability for it, but I think there's a limit to what you can expect, you know what I mean? Like if you pulled up something I said in 2009, and it was problematic, I would apologize for it, and I would sincerely mean that apology, and I would try to, but like there's only so much I can do. Like there's like, first of all, people are not expected to accept my apology, but there's also only so much I can do to show that like I've changed in 11 years besides just like existing as a different person. Like either you are like ready to recognize that I'm not the same person I was when I was 14 as I am at 25, or you're not. And like stan culture has no room for that growth or for that nuanced. I remember a couple of years ago when Halsey was like not that big yet, someone pulled up a tweet from when she was like 16 and it had the T slur in it. And it was, first of all, she was quoting RuPaul's Drag Race, I believe. Second of all, again, she was 16, and like that's not to say that like the T slur was not bad or like hurtful or that she shouldn't have apologized, but she did all those things, and people still were like, Halsey's transphobic. You cannot be like, Halsey in 2018 as a 20-something-year-old woman is transphobic because she said something shitty when she was 16. Like, you know how much growth you do in that time? That action was transphobic, but to say that that carried into the future Halsey when there's no evidence of that in her present is very disingenuous. And I think like, especially when you're like building a case against someone who's still actively causing harm and actively being problematic, you can be like, well, look, they've been doing this for years and they've had room to grow and they haven't. Like they've been saying slurs since 2011 and it's 2020 now and they're still saying slurs. Like those are all legitimate critiques, and it paints like a picture. But when someone's obviously shown growth and you are completely disregarding that growth because their success is threatening to your fave, and like you don't actually care about anything they did that may or may not have caused harm. You're just doing this because you have beef because they're successful. I so don't know if I'm making any sense. Like I thought I really need to start scripting these videos because I thought I would know what I was gonna say based off of these notes that I have, and I'm just like rambling, and this is gonna be so long and make no sense. And the thing is, like, winning the stan culture wars, like tearing someone down, having a cancellation party, that does nothing for the actual issues. It does not help the victims. It does not contribute to anti-racism effort. Like it doesn't do anything. Like spending 6 hours like memeing on a celebrity in a hashtag does not actually benefit anybody. Like you're not helping social justice in any way. You have contributed absolutely nothing. Don't do it in the name of issues when you're not actually helping the issues. And yeah, I think there's also like I think I already mentioned this, but there's an eat your own mentality in stan culture too, where it's like, because there's no room for nuanced critique. Like if you're in a fandom and something your fave does rubs you the wrong way, you can't really articulate that, especially in really big, really rabid fan bases, without being completely shunned and suddenly being turned into like an enemy. Because I think, and it comes back to that whole cancel culture mentality of like, you're just trying to cancel them because that's like the extreme where it's like either they're perfect or you're trying to cancel them. There's no room for like, hey, something this person did rubbed me the wrong way and I still love and support them, but like, I do think they should address it, or I think we as a community should have a discussion about it because it like hurt me. And I think we should be aware of that. Like telling people to die because they disagreed with you is insane. Like telling journalists to die because they wrote a bad like review of an album that you like is insane. like that's their job. Like it doesn't matter. Like a bad review is not gonna like hurt Taylor Swift's album sales. Like I promise you, the people that were gonna buy that album are still gonna buy it. The people that were never gonna stream it are not gonna stream it. Like, let critics do their jobs. They like it doesn't like it. Another thing I really want to mention is the element of racism that is very inherent to stan culture. And it's like a lot of things. The biggest one to me is the appropriation of African American vernacular English, or AAVE. And this is a discussion that like black stans and black just people on social media have been having for a very long time. This is not new, but so much of like what is associated as being stan Twitter lingo is just appropriated AAVE. And some people are like, well, stan Twitter lingo just comes from gay culture, but like that is also like appropriated AAVE. Like so much of like the lingo is stan Twitter gets from gay culture, which gay culture gets from specifically from like queer people of color specifically. And so when you like divorce it from its origins and then start using it like incorrectly, you like completely like bastardize what these words mean. And like there's a difference between, I think, being surrounded by these communities and then naturally picking up their lingo and then incorporating it into your language like correctly. Like there are terms I use that are from like AAVE, and I've picked them up because I have a lot of black mutuals on Tumblr, and I follow a lot of like black influencers and activists and such on social media. So like when I read people using those terms, they kind of naturally work their way into my vocabulary. There's a difference between that and like really inauthentically, because that's like kind of like a natural like progression of like, you know, when you hang out with someone a lot, you guys start to like reflect each other's mannerisms and lingo and stuff. And like I'm sure like I also like I say tight now sometimes because, and this is like not the same thing as like AV at all, but I just like I picked it up because I watched a lot of Water Parks interviews and Austin says it a lot. When I lived in Iran, I had a friend, because I went to an international school, and that really like first of all messed with my accent, and two, like really I was surrounded by people who use a lot of different terms, but I had a friend from Texas and she said y'all a lot. And so I, a Canadian, say y'all all the time, even though it's not really like local to where I am, because I just spent so many years with this person who says y'all, and that's just a word that naturally worked its way to my vocabulary. And a lot of like her manner of words didn't work their way in. Some naturally do, some don't. Stuff evolves like that. But when you're appropriating stuff, and that a lot of what stan Twitter does is appropriation, because A, they're like half the time they use it incorrectly, like child or cis or whatever. It's like so incredibly cringy because it's used incorrectly so much. Or like when people are like mad at someone or canceling someone, or like Donald Trump trying to like hex the president, they'll take like Ethiopian languages and use that as some sort of like kooky like hex, and that's like an actual language that people use. It's incredibly disrespectful. And it's racist. Like frankly, it's racist. Take someone's language and just like type in it as a curse because you think the letters look like menacing to you. Like really like evaluate why you think that's okay. And so like when people bring up these things, stan Twitter gets so defensive. Though it's not that serious. Like no one's appropriating AAVE. There's no like actual harmful consequences. Like it's appreciation, not appropriation. But like when you divorce those words from their origin, when you take away where they came from, you are like erasing the contributions that like black people have made to like the culture, basically. Like you're taking away what they've contributed. You're turning their words into something that is like cringe, and you get defensive when people call you out on it. And that's how you know it's not appreciation. If it was appreciation, you would do better. You would listen to the people that are criticizing you instead of turning it into a like, why are you mad we're using your words? Like you're using them wrong and you're getting mad when people call you out on it. Like fans of color have been bringing up the racism that is inherent to fandom for so long. The way that like in fandoms that are like fictional, like for example, a lot of the times like movies and TV shows or like books, the way like characters of color are so rarely given the nuance that like white characters are. They're never involved in ships, they don't have faves, they don't have like fandom events. A lot of stuff that people write is so inherently like the way people, like white fans specifically, engage in fandom a lot of the times is racist and full of microaggressions. And even people of color that are non-black or non-indigenous like approach those things in such a not appropriate way, and then when they're called out on it, they get angry. Like I don't want to wade into these waters because I feel like I will get murdered, but a lot of K-pop is anti-black. A lot of K-pop is incredibly appropriative. I'm not saying all of it is. I'm not saying the whole genre needs to be thrown away. But if you bring up these things, people are like, shut up, don't talk about it. It's not true. These people have contributed X, Y, and Z amount of money to X, Y, and Z charity. They're not racist. They don't have the cultural consciousness in like South Korea to be like aware of this stuff. Like it's like every single excuse under the book, instead of being like, you know what? Fan of color, you're right. This is problematic. This is racist. I want them to do better. They should do better. They're global celebrities now, and they should be held accountable for their actions. Kind of, okay, so another issue that I have with stan culture that I want to loop back to is going back to the whole concept of eliminating boundaries. There's also this expectation that celebrities are on all the time and that they have to be active with you all the time. So like, even if they don't announce breaks, if they're not like posting, people get upset. They're like, I miss them. And like, some of it's like genuine, some of it's like really harmless, right? Like it doesn't, it's just kind of sweet. You're like, oh, like I miss X, Y, and Z fave. Like I wish they were posting more, or like, you know, haven't heard from him. Like, well, like, you know, you kind of like, well, you miss a friend, I guess. But, and like, I get that way too. Like I've been saying this every day for like the past month in my head. I'm like, oh, I really miss Fall Out Boy. Like I want Fall Out Boy to like put out some new music. I want Fall Out Boy to like, I like miss like Patrick Stump content. You know what I mean? Like when that Family Feud episode with them and Weezer dropped, I was like so ecstatic to get new content because I was like, I have missed them. Like, like I don't know them, they don't know me, but I genuinely was like, I miss these people. Like, you know, like that's the nature of the kind of like fan to creator like relationship is like you do form attachments, and it's completely legit to like feel things for them and like have those attachments. But I would never like, this is weird, like I feel like so much of stan culture is like turned into, because we're willing to go so far for them, they owe us something. And like creators don't owe you anything other than their creations. Like whatever reason it is they have to be famous, like that content is really all they owe you. Like I know this is like, I remember when 5 Seconds of Summer took like a pretty long break between their second and third albums, like Sounds Good Feels Good and Youngblood. I think it wasn't even that long, honestly. It was like 2 years, but like the new way music releases happen, if you're not like constantly releasing, people get mad at you. But that's a whole other discussion about the way streaming has affected the music industry. But I remember so many fans left the fandom because they just felt like neglected, that like their faves weren't posting all the time, even though they didn't have music to promote. They finished all their like Sounds Good Feels Good touring and promo, and like all that was done. They hadn't started working on the album, or like if they had, they were like just in the studio. Like they did not owe their fans anything. But so many people left, and I remember distinctly a lot of the ones who got into K-pop were like, this is so refreshing because they're constantly talking to us and they're basically telling us how grateful they are for us, which like, yes, an artist should be grateful for their fan base, but there shouldn't be an expectation that because you stan them, you are owed their attention at all times. You know what I mean? Like the fact that so many K-pop artists are not like allowed to take breaks is like concerning. Like we should not be promoting that behavior. Like 5 Seconds of Summer, we're not like neglecting their fans because they just didn't interact for a couple months. Like artists should be, and creators should be allowed to take breaks. Like breaks are normal, breaks are healthy, especially when you have eyes on you at all times. Breaks should be encouraged. And so like shifting to a new person to stan because you feel like they give you more of the like intense, insane attention that you think you're owed is like not a good reason. Like you shouldn't unstan because you're not getting enough attention. You should unstan because you lost interest and you gained interest in a new thing. But, or like really, like, I don't want to like police why people get into new interests, but like your reasoning should not be this person is taking a break and I don't feel like as a fan they're giving me enough attention. Like you should not feel like they're ungrateful to you just because they're not giving you attention every single day. Like that's insane. Like the idea that their privacy is in any way selfish is really concerning to me. Or the fact they're not allowed to have personal lives or personal engagements or just like not talk to you for a little bit. Like that's completely normal. There's like the pressure to be on all the time. There's no such thing as having like an album cycle. It's just like this constant like cranking out music, cranking out tours, cranking out merch, cranking out like interactions. Like it's non-stop and it's such a grind. And that's just like because social media is on 24/7, you're expected to be on 24/7, which is not healthy for the fans or the creators. And it like again, because like the stans are so on all the time and there's such like a rabid community aspect of it, there's this entitlement that because you invest so much time into this person's career and supporting this person's career and elevating this person's career, that they now are, there's an entitlement because now you feel like because you've done all this investment in helping them, they now owe you something more than just like their product or what they're creating. Like they owe you personally for that time. That's why they should be on all the time, because like they would be nowhere without us. And like, yes, again, there's like all this is like there's a level to it that's healthy and there's like a level that's like way beyond the norm. And I think stan culture has like really like crossed all of the line. Like all you're entitled to is content. That's it, nothing else. And so again, like if you are going after, like I remember someone went after, I think it was Pitchfork, for a negative review of a Taylor Swift album, I believe. I could be wrong. I'm gonna find it and I'll post whoever it was here. But like there's no reason to be bullying album reviewers. Like zero. Like it's just someone's opinion. Like opinions are subjective. And if you're that like hung up over what some random person writing for a newspaper thinks about your fave, like go outside, like get a hobby. You are way too deep. Like I remember someone wrote an article about Fall Out Boy's most recent album, Mania, in like 2017 or 18, whenever that album came out. And I think like the part that really stuck out to me is they were like, Fall Out Boy isn't known for their lyrics, which I was like, this is blatantly untrue, like fully factually incorrect. But okay, like you know what I didn't do? I didn't find the writer of that article and talk shit about them. I think I sent it to a group chat, made a couple jokes about how like factually incorrect it was, and then I moved on. I did not harass the person that wrote it. I did not target them because I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, you know what's gonna happen? All the Fall Out Boy fans are still gonna buy Mania. They're still gonna make money. Pete Wentz and Patrick Stump and Andy Hurley and Joe Schorman are all gonna still have like the riches. Like, it's, what does it do for me to bully someone who has a different opinion than me? Like, nothing. It does absolutely nothing. And there's this weird victim mentality too of like, well, this person I stand is like a baby who must be protected. Like, no, there are rich adults who can fight all their own battles, frankly. Like, there's no need for you to be like going to town like this for people that don't know who you are. Like, you should not be threatening reviewers. They should not be fearing for their life. And this has happened so many times. Like, I remember this website made a poll, and it was like, it was some poll where you had to vote on like your favorite album or something. I can't remember, but first of all, the website broke because they weren't used to, they were like a smaller and newer website. They were not used to getting the traffic that a Stan war would bring, and Stan somehow like got a hold of this. They broke the website, and then people started going after the people that ran the website for having a website that crashed, because they were like, oh, look, the crashing of the website is somehow like a plot to take down their fave, and not just like a mishap that happens because they were a small website that was not expecting the attention that like Swifties and Selenators or whatever the fan bases are called. I'm so sorry. I'm too old to remember this lingo. But they were not expecting the attention, and like people had to take mental health breaks. They were getting misgendered. They were being sent like so much verbal abuse and harassment because a poll broke. Like, how is that not insane? And then if you call out any of these people, they just go like, haha, bestie, you don't get it. Or like they like will give you the most like insane, like absurd answers, like, haha, say that again without crying. And it's like, why are you so proud of the mob mentality and of being a bully? Like, so many of these people, I feel like they take the fact that they can't be bullies in high school and middle school, like they take the fact that they don't have that social power in this, like in their actual like day-to-day lives. Like they don't have that social power to be able to be bullies. They take that power and they harness it on the internet to be bullies within these like stan communities. Like, they're sending emails to reviewers, like news organizations, to try to get them fired for their bad reviews. Like, it's a review. Like, what on earth? Like, you don't actually have to be ride or die for these people. You know what I mean? Like, you can support them and buy their shit and stream their albums and like really, like truly, like love them to death and still like act like a normal human. Like who is raising you? Why do you think that bullying people over like subjective opinions is okay? Like, none of this is real. And like, I get that, like, and so much of this like ends up ruining fandoms for people that really do love them. Like, I have left so many fandoms because like the fan culture has gotten so toxic. Like, and yeah, you can be like, don't let the fandom ruin the thing for you, but it does, it really does. When all the people around you are like constantly negative, constantly fighting, like if you feel on edge because you feel like one like slight step out of line is gonna make people turn on you, like your friends in those stan communities turn on you, or if you're an artist, your fans turn on you, it's not fun. Like, why would you want to ever involve yourself in that? And there's so much like digging for dirt to try to cancel people. Like, oh, well, they had an opinion I didn't like, so I'm gonna like it's completely eradicated the ability to just dislike things because you dislike them. Because so much of it is like couched in this like, oh, I don't like this person because they're a competitor to my fave or a rival. I don't like them because they committed XYZ social justice crime and therefore need to be like, their heads need to be put on stakes. You can't just like dislike things because you dislike them. Like, you can't just be like, I don't like Justin Bieber because I don't vibe with him. You have to be like, here is a list of all of his transgressions and that's why I don't support him, because, and if you support him, you are morally inferior to me. Which is like, what a way to live. Like, there are plenty of things I just don't like because they just don't vibe with me. Like, I might change my mind about this, but the first couple times I listened to 100 gecs, it like hurt my brain. Like, I felt like my brain was going through blender, and it was just like not my thing. And that's like, and maybe that'll change. Maybe I will listen to them again and I will feel cool about it. I will jive with it. There are lots of things that I have not liked initially and then gotten into later. So like, don't hold me to that. But the first time I listened to 100 gecs, like, it literally felt like my brain was put through a blender. Which is fine. Like, it just was not for me. I'm not gonna like dig for reasons why 100 gecs is bad and problematic and everyone who stands them is a terrible person. because like because like who cares? I don't know, maybe I will find something, maybe I won't, but like you can just not like things. And I feel like and like I can like the things I like without trying to tear down the things other people like you can just like do your thing. And so much of like stan culture has like forgotten about like you can just like stay in your space, stay in your lane, and like have fun with it. And like even like, yeah, like promote your celebrity, like, but like why does promoting your fave have to come at the expense of someone else? Like I get that only one person can be at the top, but like just focus on elevating your person. You don't need to like dig into like Ed Sheeran's Twitter history to find reasons why. I don't know why Ed Sheeran came to mind. Like I don't even know what he's doing these days, but you don't have to do all that. Like you can just like listen to Lorde and do your thing and like just like vibe without having to tear down all of her competitors. You know what I mean? And also like, again, like, yeah, it's nice to have a #1, but like being #2 on the Billboard charts is not like shitty. Like no one failed. Like you're still immensely successful if you reach that like level of career. Like are these people like paying your bills? Like I get that they bring you joy. I get that like a lot of the times it's like really good. It like helps you, but like Jesus Christ. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of the psychology of all this. I think I've ranted a lot. I'm hopefully gonna trim a lot of my ranting out, but a lot of this comes back to the psychology of what is going on when you become a fan of something. So I'm sure everybody has heard of parasocial relationships by now. Like I think the parasocial relationship like discussion has been done to death, but for anyone who like doesn't know what a parasocial relationship is, they're one-sided relationships essentially, where like you don't know the person you're in like if you have a parasocial relationship, you feel like you know a person, like a celebrity, you feel like you know them, you are connected to them, but they don't know who you are at all. You feel like they're a friend to you, but they don't know who you are at all. It's very much defined by being very one-sided. And a lot of the times these relationships form if the person you have a parasocial relationship with is either like relatable to you in some way, or they're attractive to you, or kind of oftentimes, and like I think in most likely scenario, like a mix of both. Like you relate to them in a lot of ways, but you also like find them attractive in some way. And not necessarily like sexually attractive or like romantically attractive, but like you just like something about them like sparks your interest, and you get like very, very invested. And like psychologically based on what I've looked into, this happens just because it's like putting all your energy into this person becomes like an escape from real life for you. And it's easier to form relationships that are one-sided like this with a public figure that doesn't know who you are and can't reject you than actually like put yourself out there and try to form a relationship in real life that is like mutual and goes both ways and involves the risk of rejection or like exposing who you are like fully. And it kind of, when you form a parasocial relationship with a celebrity, it gives you this like sense of fulfillment, which like I feel so hard. Like I really do form these attachments to these people that I quote unquote stan or like just fan. Like I hate using stan because of all the stuff we talked about, but it's like sort of just fallen into my vocabulary because it's such a fixture of the culture. Like using that terminology is so inescapable now that like if you want to talk about being a fan of anything now, you just like have to use the standing lingo. But anyways, like when you stan something, like you really do get that sense of fulfillment. Like whenever I find a new thing to like hyper fixate on, frankly, it really does give you like like when you find a new thing to stan, like I really do feel fulfilled. Like my brain really does like click in a way that it doesn't when I'm like in between stands. Like I have periods when I'm like kind of grown out of something before I grow into something new, where I'm like not focusing on something and my brain gets so bored. Like I don't know how people that don't participate so intensely in things, like I don't know how their brains operate. I don't know how they pass the time. But like for example, when I still love 5 Sauce, like 5 Seconds of Summer, but between the time when I kind of grew out of them in like 2018 was kind of, I think, when that tapered off and I stopped like standing them, but I was still like, I still am invested in their careers and want them well, but my brain wasn't like hyper fixated on like them anymore. And between me finding like moving out of them in 2018 and kind of like fixating on, I think, like bands this year, like I kind of returned to my like roots of being 13, 14 and like standing emo bands. Kind of returning to that, but also like discovering new bands like Water Parks and The Rex and I Don't Know How and stuff. Like between that like the 2 years in between there, I was like so bored, like genuinely, like mentally I was just like checked out. Like nothing interested me. I felt like very dead inside. Having that like attachment, it really does have like stress relieving effects. Like, and I know it does. Like like when my faves do something, like it brings me so much joy. Like when Fall Out Boy does something new, or if I see like a funny video of like Patrick Stump, like my whole it really does light me up. Like it makes me so happy. It like makes my day. Like when my favorite bands do stuff, it just brings me so much joy. Like I've never been happier than I am like at a concert of a band that I'm actively standing. So I get it. It really is stress relieving. And so you do extend a lot of energy into these interests. And so like one psychological model that's like been proposed for for this is like the absorption addiction model, which basically the premise is you absorb them via the media they post and through like research and buying merch and like watching interviews, and you kind of like invest a lot of time into like really feeling like you've absorbed part of them and they become part of your identity, and this becomes like a kind of addiction, and you kind of become addicted to the feeling of like the investment, which I really do think the way stan culture gets so intense, it does kind of reflect a form of addiction, which in itself is kind of like inherently a little bit problematic. But that's only one theory, and I've only seen it like written about on one website. So I do think the psychology there needs to be like researched more. The parasocial relationship thing, that's just like pretty standard. Like people have known about that for like decades. But the specific model of like what happens like and framing it as a form of addiction, I think that is something we should probably research more with before we like blanket stamp it on things. But that was one theory that I read about, and I did want to like bring it up. But yeah, when you invest all this time and attention, and then you like form this like one-sided relationship with a figure, and then you end up putting them on a pedestal. And when someone's on a pedestal, it makes it very hard to see them as a human and see them as like a three-dimensional person with facets that you don't see. When they're on a pedestal, you will go to extreme lengths to defend them, because when they make mistakes or fuck up, or even when it's something worse, it's not just like a harmless fuck up, but it's like genuinely like they did something really bad, you will like bend over backwards to be like, well, maybe it's not true, or maybe they didn't actually do this, because that pedestal made them not feel real, and they made them not feel like someone who's able to make mistakes. When someone's like, because they're humans, they're not demigods, they're bound to make mistakes. When you put them on a pedestal, it like there's like a cognitive dissonance there, and if you accept that they're human and they can make mistakes, it kind of like the whole illusion of them that you've built in your head, it will start to collapse. And that's, I think, why people take it so personally when people try to like even like nicely critique or like analyze their faves. And again, when you feel like you know someone, like even if it's a one-sided thing, if you feel like you know them, it erases the boundaries, and which is why it's like with your friends, you're so likely to make jokes that are kind of rude, or like make life judgments based on the very small snippets you see on social media, because again, it doesn't feel one-sided or one-dimensional to you. You feel like you have an image of the whole person, and you don't. You're putting them on a pedestal, and you have no idea what they're really like. Like truly, I cannot fully articulate how one-dimensional the perception of celebrities you see is. No matter how real they feel for you, they are putting on it's just inherent. They are putting on a bit of a persona, a bit of a facade. And sure, some celebrities have like fully manufactured like personas that are completely different than how they are in real life, and some celebrities are very similar and only really like tweak it up or down a little bit. Like it's very different. Like I'm not saying like everything you know is like fake or like made up or anything, but like every celebrity has like media training. Every celebrity like interacts publicly like with a face that they don't interact with their friends and family with, which is like healthy. It's normal. You're obviously not going to like approach a situation where you're meeting thousands of people that don't know you the same way you like hang out with your friends or family, or the way you joke around with your friends. But yeah, when you put so much energy into defending a person and investing in their careers and investing in giving them money like monetary time, monetary funds, energy, time, it becomes part of your identity. And so like critiquing the thing you're standing becomes a critique of you as a person. And I think that's why people take it so seriously. Like if you are, I don't know, if you are a BTS stan and someone's critiquing BTS, it becomes a critique of you as a person. And that's like, and you feel even more compelled to defend yourself, because if BTS is bad, this is like very simplifying it, but if BTS is bad and BTS is part of your identity, then you become bad based on your attachment to them. And it's also like this weird thing of like, because you like, again, there's a weird rat race of getting noticed, because everyone is like fighting for notices, because again, there's no boundaries between fan and creator interactions. It's almost like a perception of the more dedicated and loyal and like uncritiquing you are, the more of a true fan you seem like. And so your chances of getting noticed go up, because you know, you perceive it as like, well, if I critique them, they're not going to want to give me that notice, because they're going to think I'm like disloyal, or I'm being mean, or I'm being too critical. Whereas like if someone is like unquestioningly standing, then like more likely to get noticed. And obviously like stan culture and stuff like this like oftentimes will like boost your self-esteem. I think because it builds a community, and you feel like you have attachments and you are part of something that's bigger than you. And I think it's like there's a lot of benefits to that. Like I definitely have grown as a person through my relationships that I formed through shared community via fandom. And again, like none of this like stuff within like certain constraints is inherently bad. And I think a lot of the critiques that come of stan culture and fan culture in general become misogynistic. They become critiques of teen girls as just like as beings that feel emotions. And I think there's no acknowledgement that fan bases for a lot of people are safe spaces that give them time and opportunities to grow and explore their sexuality and explore their identities and like just like be safe. Like that's why fan bases are so often like predominantly based through women and queer people. Like, that's because those are some of the only spaces where those people in those groups feel safe to express themselves. Like, it's not inherently a bad thing. This isn't like a stop being a fan, stop being a stan, or even like dismantle communities and make this all like an individual one-on-one like kind of experience. Like, it's not that at all. I think there's also just like a tendency of like, because everything is so in the spotlight now, it feeds itself. Like, Beatlemania spread and grew because of press coverage. Like Beatlemania happened before the Beatles even came to the US because of press coverage from the UK, and how like it was like the fangirls in the UK were crazy, and then it came to the States, and like the States were not, everyone was nuts in the States. Like, that is how it spread, and that was just through like newspapers and radio and stuff. And now it's all on social media, so it's like it catches on so much faster, and it's like dialed up to 10, right? It's so much more intense. And so teens now get that like exposure and like access and like promotion of like stan values like 24/7. There's not really any escape. And so like the collectiveness and the connections and just the freedom, like no matter where you are and how rich you are, how poor you are, like you can be part of this thing that's bigger than you and like puts you on equal playing fields. I think that's very enticing for a lot of people, especially a lot of teenagers. Like, that's the thing, it's like so much of this, like, especially if you're a teenager figuring yourself out and you have nothing else and you feel lonely, like this all makes so much sense. Like, for me, I made my strongest fan, like the stuff that sticks to me the most that I was a fan of at 13 and I'm a fan of at 25 is stuff that I got into when I was a sad, lonely teenager. And that was really the only thing that kept me going. Like, had me like waking up in the, honestly, and like not like falling into a pit of despair, was like my love for bands and like logging on to the Panic at the Disco message boards to talk to my friends about how much we love these bands and how much like their music meant to us. Like, I totally get it. And I really don't want to like wrap this video up without acknowledging a lot of the positive aspects of fan culture, like, and stan culture. If like the art and the artist and the creator, if they themselves are like very positive, they can spread positive messages if they use their platform responsibly, really. Like, and I know like people have issues with like Harry Styles stans for being like really intense and like not necessarily always following the mantra of Harry Styles, but Harry Styles' whole treat people with kindness, like that's a really, like, maybe some people think it's cheesy, but like inherently, like that's a really great message. Like, it's really sweet that like thousands of people are now walking around with merch that says treat people with kindness. Like, regardless of its affiliation with like a pop star, like that is such a great message to be spreading. And yeah, it's a very basic one, but like we need more of that. And they have so much power, like if they use their platforms for good. So like, yes, we talked about like racism in K-pop earlier, but like, for example, the Black Lives Matter protests, I know BTS donated, I believe, $1 million, and their fan base matched that within 24 hours. They also raised $1 million, which is crazy. Like that, again, the ability for fan bases to kind of harness their collective power and put it into something. A lot of times that collective power is used for bad, like it's used for bullying and targeting and mob mentality stuff, but it can be, when directed in the right direction, like that stuff can be used for so much good. I remember when One Direction was a thing, for each of the boys' birthdays every year there was always a birthday fundraiser, and it was always like whatever year they were trying, like however old they were turning, it was that many thousands of dollars. So like for like Harry's 23rd birthday, it would be like $23,000, let's raise it, and they would always match it. Like, and that was like always crazy to me. Like, again, these fan bases have, I'm like, my throat is giving out on me, but these fan bases have so much power to do so much good when they harness that like collective unity that they have and direct it at something good. And again, like I said, they're safe spaces for people to figure themselves out, to explore their identities. I know so many like people have like felt really safe exploring their gender identities or their sexualities in these spaces where they can talk to other people like them and really like have the discussions that they may don't feel safe having like in their real lives with like in-person friends or with their families, or they live in like a community where they don't feel like they're going to be accepted, but they do feel accepted in these safe spaces, because like it doesn't matter what your gender is or what your race is, you're all united by this love for this one thing. And like the support and the passion is like, none of those things are inherently bad. And again, friendships are formed. I know for me, like it was like, a lot of this happened when I was living in Iran, and so I was very isolated from the culture that I knew from Canada and like my friends, and I didn't have anyone that had common interests with me. And so the ability that like fan bases gave me to create friends from all around the world, that we were all united by this just love for bands, was so important and so vital to me. And like, I'm so glad that kids are still having those experiences, that they're still making friends around the world and like learning about new cultures because of the internet, and because of the ability that stan culture gives them to make all these new friends from around the world and like feel united about these one thing that they're really passionate about. And like, you do make lifelong friendships. Like, I don't want people to be like, oh, it's stupid. Like, I have friends where we met in fan bases and we no longer, either of us are interested really in that thing, but we still talk, we're still like best friends because we met through that thing. Like, it's not impossible, it's not irresponsible. And I think the fact that the internet has shifted from this whole like the internet is this evil dark thing, never ever give identifying information about yourself on the internet, which is how the internet was when I was a kid, to like And like very much like telling any of the people you're friends with anything identifying about yourself was a huge step. It was very much like you didn't do it easily at all. I'm so glad now that kids feel like the internet has become almost like such an open space where like if people do want to be like gross like that, they have to really take it into like a shadowy dark place. But people, like kids, do feel safer forming those friendships, and it's like so much more normalized to have friends. And it's like I think people, there's still an element of judgment, but it's so much less weird to have like internet friends now. Like you're not like a freak if you have a group of friends and you stand like, because you all stand the same thing and you live in different parts of the world. Like it's not weird to have internet friends anymore. And yeah, I think especially for marginalized people who like struggle to form connections, you definitely find a diverse and accepting community online, even if you don't have that in person. And I think that kind of connection can and does save lives. I think, again, the collective power, not only for donations, but just like when that's like aimed at the right thing, like fan cams and that like hashtag spamming, when directed at the right causes, I think is so powerful. Like I know a lot of K-pop stans were using, during the Black Lives Matter protests and the racial inequality stuff, and the police brutality things, they were flooding white supremacist hashtags and really racist hashtags with fan cams and just really drowning out those harmful messages and like dismantling those platforms for people that were using social media to find like-minded individuals. And by like-minded, I mean like racist, white supremacist, hateful individuals were trying to find each other and trying to promote those really harmful ideas. And like fandoms have that power now to like collectively direct their energy into dismantling those harmful spaces. Is like it's incredible. The fact that they do use it sometimes for good is like phenomenal. Like I don't want to disregard like all of the good that fandom does, because fandom is so much good, and stan culture really does have some really amazing aspects. And yeah, like even just for like fan bases, like a lot of the times fandoms do promote their faves better than actual like managers and promoters and PR people do. And like frankly, it's almost like I don't know the details, but do you really need to pay someone to do promo for you if you have a fan base? Like I feel like once you hit a certain level of like clout and like recognition, and you have a certain level of like leeway on the internet, once you have like a certain amount of like followers, you can rely on them to do the work for you a lot of the time, because they are more creative, and they do know like because they're not doing it out of like a monetary, we are getting paid to do this for you. They're doing it because they're so passionate about it and they have so much love for X, Y, and Z that they want to see that person or entity or creation do well. It's almost like because they're doing it out of love and for free, really, like a lot of the times they understand how to market this stuff better. They like crack the algorithms. They figure out how like Spotify or Google or YouTube or whatever chart does their shit, and they like will hack at it. And that's like it's crazy. It's incredible. It's like I don't want to understate how amazing that is. So I guess to like wrap things up, because this is already so long, I just wanted to like kind of summarize what I think the way forward is, like and how to solve some of the issues I talked about. And by talked about, I think I just ranted about, but I just really I don't want to like leave this video on like a negative note or like things are fine, I need to stay the same. I think if you're like a stan who like is worried maybe you're too invested, I think you need to always remember that these people are rich, they are famous, they have resources. They are not your children, they are not your responsibility, and you don't need to like go above and beyond to defend them. Like, I think if you feel like legitimately they're being unfairly critiqued, you can bring that up in a respectful manner. It does not need to be this mob mentality, like bullying shit that turns into like, you're so ugly, you're so fat, go kill yourself. Like none of that's productive. And they don't need you to be spreading hatred in their name. And if they do want you to spread hatred in their name, reevaluate why you're standing them in the first place. Like if they are weaponizing their fan bases, they are not good people. Like support is good, toxicity is not, and so much of stan culture is just like relentless toxicity. And I think really like fan bases need to like acknowledge that they have so much power, and acknowledge that because not to like sound like Uncle Ben, but like with great power comes great responsibility. And if you have that leverage as a fan base, like you need to use it responsibly. I've been talking for so long that my camera died, so we're gonna try to wrap this up. So artists need to like call out bad behavior. Like obviously artists are not responsible for the actions of their fans. Like I really hate when people are like, well, X fan, like if someone's like, oh well, this person hasn't like denounced what their fans are doing, so they must condone it. I don't think artists are responsible for their fan bases whatsoever. However, I think if your fan base is staging a targeted attack on someone in your name, the right thing to do is to call that shit out and to say that if you support me, you will not spread hate in my name, you will not spread toxicity in my name, you will not bully people in my name, you will not pile on people in my name. Because like, and I think more so than that, they shouldn't direct their fan bases at people knowing the power they have. And they have to be like if a huge account with like millions of followers starts like snarking with a really, like with someone with 300 followers, they need to know that that will like spread, that person is going to get targeted by their fans. And so they need to be responsible with the power that having a fan base that is that united and that big and that strong holds. Fans need to just remember that like fan bases are supposed to be fun. Standing is supposed to be fun. You don't need to prove your loyalty by sticking around or by endorsing toxicity or by like piling on when there's these giant mob attack parties. Like, you don't need to prove your loyalty to the person you support by doing those things. And if they are a good person, they shouldn't expect you to do those things to prove you're a real fan. And if you see something that you dislike, like, you can just leave. Like, you don't have to stick around. And if you have moved on from something, there is no need to then look for reasons to tear it down to justify you leaving. You can just lose interest in stuff, and there's no need to be like, well, they changed, they became toxic, oh, I actually realized they're super problematic, here's like a list of reasons why they're actually terrible, and if you aren't leaving with me, you actually are condoning this awful behavior. You can just stop being interested in stuff. Like, that's normal, it's healthy, and it happens. And people shouldn't judge you for it, and you shouldn't judge people that are still interested in something that you are no longer into. Like, I think there's also a mentality of like, well, this thing I used to be into, but then I grew out of it, and so if you're still into it, you're cringy, or like, why are you still into this thing that's like so childish and cringe? Like, people get into things and grow out of things at different paces, and that's like totally fine. Like, just leave stuff you dislike alone and move on, and let the people that still enjoy it just like hang out and have fun. If someone is putting out like a nuanced, polite critique of something you love, like, there's no need to go on the defensive. Like, if they're not doing it from like a rude place or a harmful place, and they're just like raising a concern, or they just dislike something, but they're expressing their dislike in a polite way, there is no need to attack them. Like, critiquing things makes everyone better. Calling out problematic behavior and educating people nicely about what they've done wrong makes everybody a better person. Like, I have learned so much from people politely correcting me, from politely telling me why something is problematic. I know people that I've watched people that I've supported become better people and grow and learn in front of my very eyes because they've had fan bases that have been like good enough to like educate them. Like, no one is born perfect, no one knows everything. And I think if we just like did everything we're doing right now nicer and like just dialed everything down a little bit and approached everything with a little bit more empathy, like, the culture on the internet and on Twitter would just be so much healthier. I really think like I worry about a lot of these kids, and I think ultimately a lot of them are just gonna grow out of these behaviors. Like, I think a lot of it is just like, again, when you're like 12 to like 16, everything feels crazy to you. Like, you are full of hormones, you don't understand anything, everything is the world's biggest deal to you. Like, every little transgression feels like the end of the world. And so like, to an extent, I really think these kids are going to grow out of a lot of this behavior that's really toxic. But I think because even if like I acknowledge that they're young and they're going to grow out of it, what they're doing and the harms they're doing to real people does not exist in a vacuum. And I think a lot of the times when you call this stuff out, people are like, well, they're just like, if you call out like a stan who's being problematic, it either becomes, why are you like, you're picking on minors, which, like, again, being a minor does not mean you are free of repercussions. It means the consequences of your actions are not the same as what they would be if you were an adult. It doesn't mean you are devoid of consequences. So like, minors can be called out on shitty behavior and should be called out on shitty behavior. So 1. 2, it's always like, why are you fighting with a stan account? Like, grow up. Like, don't you have like taxes to pay or like children to feed? Like, because again, it turns around and it becomes like, what you are invested in trying to make this a better space. What is your issue? Instead of like, why don't we just accept that things can be better? Like, bullying, it doesn't matter if someone's like a blue check or famous. Like, I got retweeted by Chart Data once by accident. I think they have some sort of like bot that makes, like, anytime they get a quote retweet from a verified account, their account then retweets that, because I tweeted something from them about My Chemical Romance's 3 Cheers for Street Revenge being back on the Billboard 200. And they immediately retweeted it, and then like all like, I guess because Stan Twitter like stalks Chart Data, they all came into my mentions and were like being like, who is this? Why is she verified? She only has 400 something followers, and like dragging me. And like, it was funny because like no one was being actually rude to me, but it was just like this weird like immediate like jump on me just for existing and having the audacity to have like a verified check mark that I have no control over because I don't run Twitter, when their fave like, I don't know, internet personality didn't have one. It was just like, I was just like, what are you guys doing? Like, what? You don't know me. Why are you talking to me? Like, then people were calling me bestie, and I was like, I know it's Stan Twitter lingo, but like, who are you? Why are you talking to me like this? And so like, I don't want to be like, stop having fun or like stop making jokes or like the whole culture needs to go. But I just think like, I think there needs to just be nuance. You know what I mean? And I really think artists need to stop encouraging it. Like, I gotta wrap shit up. Like, my battery died, and then my memory card was full. I need to wrap this video up. Yeah, so I just like, artists really need to stop encouraging like, unhealthy stan behavior. I remember in like 2017, I think it was 2017, Louis Tomlinson, like his fans were going after I think it was Ash London or some like presenter, journalist, host lady. Sorry, my dog is biting. And fans are piling onto her. And then he tweeted something and it was kind of like, it was almost like I'm gonna post the screenshots here if I can find them, but it was definitely like an encouragement of his fans to go after her. And so that pile on happened and got even worse, and she literally had to like quit the internet for like half a year. Ariana has definitely like had her fans sending people really terrible things, and when people like, when the person who is the target of this vitriol was like, hey, can you like tell them to lay off, she was kind of was like, oh, they're just passionate, which again is like an endorsement of those actions. Like if you don't want someone to spread hate in your name and you know they're doing it, if you're not gonna call it out, because again, it's not your responsibility, don't encourage it. And even if you're encouraging it in DMs, you're still like endorsing that behavior. And so like if you're not gonna like call it out, at least like the least you can do is not endorse it. And I think when you have a fan base that is that large and that rabid, and you know they're like that passionate, the least you can do is target that responsibly. Nicki Minaj had a whole feud with a Toronto journalist, I believe, where her fans were calling her shit, and where she like attacked someone in DMs, and then when that person posted like, hey, this is like not cool, all of the barbs went after them for posting the screenshots and like defending her and being like, oh well, Nicki's our baby. And like, again, all these people are rich, they are millionaires, they are fine, they don't need you to like be attack dogs for them. Like they really don't. Like your fandom should not, like your fandom experience should not be about like refreshing Twitter 12 hours a day and like attacking people all day and getting into fights and like feuding. And I feel like so much of the discourse has become just discourse for the sake of discourse and not productive. Like it's just like people get off of like, people just get off on the power trip of thinking they're more knowledgeable or more woke or more like into something than everyone else. And so it just becomes like these weird discourse back and forths of like whose fave is the most woke and who can feel the most morally superior by having the most woke fave. And it's this weird like intermingling of like celebrity culture and like fake social justice culture that's combined this weird monstrosity where it's like Twitter is just like, Stan Twitter is like a hellhole now of people fighting over everything, making up discourse for the sake of just making up discourse. Like frankly, like having the most insane like social justice arguments that like if you talk to like any person like outside, they're not gonna know anything of what you're talking about. And that's a good thing. It doesn't mean you're more woke. It literally just means you are fighting with other 13-year-olds about dumb shit that like ultimately doesn't matter. I think the energy is good. And if there's no like collective, like we need to call this shit out because stan culture is heading in a direction that is already so unhealthy and it's just gonna get worse. It's gonna become intolerable. Like I think the younger a fandom is, the more like it starts from such an intolerable place and continues in that direction. And I feel like the TLDR of this whole video is be critical of the people you support and the people you don't like. Like bring the same energy to both of those things, but treat people like humans. Don't put them on pedestals, expect them to make mistakes, and really read intent. Like someone making a harmless mistake and someone like being a predator are two different scenarios that require two different responses. If your social justice is built on superiority and proving that the person you support is better than someone else, just like throw it all away. It's trash, get rid of it. These are real people, support them critically. Like really, like idol worship, to quote Haley Williams, is like it's terrible. It's so unhealthy. And honestly, like if stan Twitter is overwhelming you, if you're stressed, if you log on every day and you're worried about like your fave getting canceled or you getting attacked or you're being bullied, like just log off. Like none of this is real. None of this matters. Like it matters to you because you are living that experience and you're having fun with it. But like in the grand scheme of the world, it doesn't matter. And just because it doesn't matter, it does not mean it's not important. If it is important to you, it's valid. But ultimately, like if you need to step back, there is nothing wrong with that. It's not admitting defeat. It's not weakness. This video has been such an ordeal to film. My camera has died like 3 times. I ran out of memory on a full memory card. This is driving me crazy. I need to finish this. So yeah, if you need to take a step back, take a step back. Like that's all normal. It's totally fine. You're not a lesser fan for taking a step back or just leaving. Like if things are bothering you, like I see so many kids that are like stressed out about stan culture and stressed out who likes them or who like doesn't like them and like cliques and like big name fans, and it's like none of this is real. Like if it is more, if it's causing you more harm than benefit, like just leave. And on that note, I think I am going to call it because this video is so long. I'm so afraid of editing it. Sorry, I really hope this made sense. Like through all of the shit I've been saying, I hope one shred of this made any sense to you. But yeah, I post new videos every Wednesday. They're not all like this. But if you liked it, I would appreciate if you could like, comment, subscribe if you wanted to stick around for more. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter, and I will see you all next week. Bye!